Ariel Helwani in Toronto gearing up for UFC 140 alongside UFC President Dana White. And Dana, it's good to see you again a couple of days removed from the Ultimate Fighter 14 finale. We're back in Toronto, and the first thing I wanted to talk to you about, why did you come back to Toronto so soon after UFC 129? You've only done this once before, outside of Vegas, right. Montreal a couple of years ago. Why come back so soon, just 7 months later?
I don't know. I mean, Toronto's a great market, and it's a place that, you pull people from, all the parts of Canada here, people from New York, and that all top of the United States on the East Coast there can attend. So it just makes sense when we look at certain markets that we know are strong, and we do it. We pull the trigger.
Are you surprised it hasn't sold out yet?
No. I mean, we're right on. We're right on. I mean, people keep making a big deal about this because we sold 55,000 tickets here recently. I mean, when you come in, we knew this first event was going to be an event. It was going to be huge, and that this thing would sell out. Even then, did I think we were going to sell 55,000? I mean, I was being very conservative for that big Toronto fight. I said, I was saying 30 something. We pushed this market to the limits and tested it with that big stadium show. But this is completely normal now that we're back up here. People, if tickets don't sell out the first hour, like, oh my God, this event is is bombed. This is the typical event. We have a couple thousand tickets left, which is a sellout. The people will do walk-up this week and the day of the event.
How hard did you?
And if I thought we were going to crush it again, we'd be in 55,000 seats again, or we'd be doing. There's arenas here that'll hold 30,000. We didn't do that. We came in and we felt this market out the right way.
How hard did you have to convince Jon Jones to come back just 2 months after the Rampage fight?
Not too hard. I mean, this kid was ready to come back in and fight. He said after this one, I want a vacation. So after this fight, he's going to take some time off.
Now, how long do you think it will be before we see him again if he wins? And is there a chance that, I know you say Rashad versus Phil Davis, that's to determine the number one contender, but is there a chance that those guys will have to fight another time if Jones takes an extended period of time away?
It's tough to answer that question. It depends on them. I mean, Jones is fighting Saturday, which is now the beginning of December. These guys won't fight till January. And believe me, when guys say, yeah, I need some time off after this fight, what's time off? How long is it? A young guy like Jones, not even in the prime of his career yet, has the opportunity to come out and just keep moving and keep fighting while he's young and healthy, make a lot of money, get all these fights banked, and grow his legend, I guess. I mean, this kid's 24 years old. In MMA, guys can fight well into their mid-30s. I mean, what does that mean for this kid? How many fights is this kid going to have? How many people is he going to beat? It's just, it's exciting.
Do you think he'll end up as a heavyweight when it's all said and done?
I do. I think that he's so young and so big. And, I never hear any stories. I don't know how hard his cut is to 205. I've never heard any stories that he has trouble making weight. But I would have to assume that, if he keeps going on the path that he's on and he wipes out the entire light heavyweight division, a move to heavyweight would be an interesting move for him.
On the flip side, what do you say to the people who say that Machida does not deserve a title shot? He's 1-2 in his last 3 fights.
Yeah, well, would you deny that Machida is one of the top 10 guys in the world? I mean, and it's like Jon Jones said today. He sees Machida as one of these guys. I'm going to have to fight this guy eventually. He's one of the best in the world, so I'm eventually going to have to fight him. Now is the time that it's happening, and I'm cool with that.
Speaking of convincing,
and anybody out there who feels that Machida doesn't deserve a shot at the title, do you think this fight's going to suck and it's not going to be interesting and it's not going to be fun? And do you think that there's a remote possibility that Machida can't win this fight? I mean, come on. That's people just being stupid.
Speaking of convincing, did you have to convince Frank Mir to take this fight against Big Nog? Because that was one of the greatest, if not the greatest moment of his career when he knocked him out at UFC 92. And now to have to sort of reprove himself all over again, it may take something away from that win. So
not at all. I think that what happened with that fight was, and it was brought up here today at the press conference, there were some excuses made after that fight. So Mir jumped at the opportunity to take this fight again, and that, there's no excuses this time. We're doing it twice, and so Frank Mir's been one of these guys through his whole career There's never been a time that we've called Frank Mir and Frank Mir wasn't interested to take a fight.
You said that Brock Lesnar and Alistair Overeem are going to fight to determine who will be the #1 contender, but Junior Dos Santos just had knee surgery. Is there a chance they will have to fight maybe the winner of this fight, Big Nog versus Mir, to then determine the #1 contender if JDS is out for a very long time?
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how long that's going to last. And, I deal with that stuff as it happens.
Tito Ortiz is fighting Little Nog on this card, and Tito has talked about the transformation of his character. When did you start to see him sort of change? And now he's starting to move towards this more positive persona, the people's champion, and all this stuff. He wants to put the Huntington Beach bad boy stuff to the side. When did you start to notice that he was changing, or maybe you do not even believe that he's changed?
He has changed. Obviously, Tito and I get along now. If Tito didn't change, Tito wouldn't be here. We were in a position where Tito and I absolutely could not get along. And now we do. So Tito has changed. He, the move to the people's champ. He said today at the press conference, it took him 4 hours to talk me into it. Tito can change his name to whatever he wants. He asked my opinion on it, and I was like, I don't get it, but if that's what you want to do it. But as far as who he is, he's a completely different person.
It's amazing. I saw you just 3-4 days ago, yet so much has happened since then in the world of MMA. So if you don't mind, just a couple of questions about other stuff non-related to UFC 140. Yesterday you were in Chicago announcing the UFC on Fox #2 show on January 28th, and just want to get your thoughts on what Rashad Evans said, making that joke about the Penn State situation. Did you feel, and we sort of got into a debate with this about this with other fighters yesterday, and a lot of them were sticking up for Rashad. Do you feel as though that was an appropriate thing to say?
Here's one of the things, man, and it's one of the things. There's a couple reporters out there that I can't stand in this sport who like attention and want to get attention, and they wrote their stupid stories. Here's the thing. I'm dealing with intelligent people. It's not like I'm dealing with a bunch of dummies here. Rashad's a smart guy. Phil Davis went to Penn State. He wrestled for Michigan. And, he got into this heated, they started going back and forth at the press conference, and that came out of his mouth. Was it good? No, it wasn't good at all. It was bad. It was a bad thing to say. And it was extremely stupid to say. It's one of the dumbest things you could say. But he did it. He did it. He made a mistake. And again, I read these stories from the Josh Grosses and, just this negative, pessimistic, creepy guy, man, who is supposed to be in this because they supposedly like the sport. I hate this holier than thou attitude with people. It makes me sick. Yes, guys are going to make mistakes and going to say stupid stuff, and depending on what you say and how you say it, people will be punished for things that they say. But it's like they expect us to listen. If you guys want me to have our lawyer write up something for me to come out and say, I'd be more than happy to come out on camera and read a statement from my lawyer saying this, that, and the other thing. We're dealing with intelligent people here who are going to make mistakes sometimes. And Rashad made a mistake yesterday. And when I talked to Rashad about it after, first of all, I didn't even hear that was what he said. I don't know if you noticed the microphone situation yesterday at that press conference was the worst microphone situation I've ever dealt with in the last 10 years. And I didn't hear what he said. So then later, I didn't, even after the press, nobody said anything to me. It was never on Twitter. And then when the Creep wrote his story, then I had heard what he said. And I went out and talked to Rashad. And Rashad was like, yeah, I don't know why I said it. It came out of my mouth and it shouldn't have. So, I deal with these guys like normal human beings. I go in and I say, why did you say something stupid? The bigger issue and what I'm working on right now was what I heard that Miguel Torres tweeted yesterday, okay? Now, when Forrest tweeted something like that, when I called him, his explanation was dead on and it made absolute sense. I haven't talked to Miguel Torres yet. Actually, this morning I did an interview here with Landsberg. Mm-hmm. Landsberg read me the tweet that Miguel Torres had tweeted yesterday.
For those that didn't read it, do you mind just giving us
I don't remember exactly what it said, but it had to do with a rape ban. Yeah, and it just, I don't know, man. It's not a good one.
Stepping aside from this, considering this new era that we're in, considering that we're about to go on, the UFC is about to go on Fox, mainstream, on the horizon, is it time to talk to these guys? Because it's so easy to tweet and make a mistake. Is it time to just...
We're dealing with intelligent people here. It's one thing if you're in a sport that's full of stupid people, guys that are really dumb. You can't fix stupid. You know what I mean? There's nothing you can do about that, and you probably want to keep these guys out of the public eye. We're dealing with educated guys here, guys who went to college, guys who are extremely smart, handle their own businesses, have their own businesses, have families, have kids, and and wives, and so people are going to say stupid stuff, and depending on what you say and how you say it, that's how I'm going to handle this.
You've been very vocal about Mayhem Miller's performance on Saturday night. Some people think that you have it out for him. Why have you been so critical of his performance? It's certainly not the worst performance ever, but it seems as though you have made a point to say it was one of the worst performances in UFC history. Why have you been so vocal, and does he have a future in your company?
Well, my question is, when have you not seen me be vocal over a fight that sucks? I mean, I'm not this guy that, happens in the UFC and I'm like, that was a great fight. You guys are crazy. You don't know what you're looking at. That was some of the best stand-up I've ever seen. I mean, come on, let's be honest. I don't care if you're a Mayhem Miller fan or you're not. That was some of the most pathetic stand-up I've ever seen in my life. It was embarrassing. And I don't have it out for Mayhem Miller. Why would I have it out for this guy? He just pulled off an incredible season on The Ultimate Fighter. It was extremely successful, and he was one of the big stars on the show. But I've seen ring rust before. Ring rust is real. It happens, and it's that wasn't ring rust. What that was is, I don't know. I can't even explain that. This guy's been in the business for 10, I've got all the Mayhem fans attacking me on Twitter and everything else, which is awesome. I love it. I'm glad that, listen, if you guys love that fight and you thought that stand-up was incredible, are you kidding me? That makes me happy. It makes me happy. Tune in for all Mayhem Miller fights, okay? If you love that fight and you thought he looked outstanding, that nobody on earth is happier about that than me. But I'm being honest, and I'm giving my assessment of the fight, and I thought his stand-up was horrendous.
Will he be brought back?
We'll see what happens.
Well,
the fans have spoken. I mean, they've been beating me up on Twitter for since Saturday. So we'll see what happens.
A couple last quick things. You just announced Uriah Faber and Dominic Cruz as the coaches for Tough 15 on FX. It's live now. So does that mean, usually it would be, you tape it, then it airs, and then you have the coaches fight. Does that mean that they will fight immediately after the show airs live on FX? If it runs up to July, then they will fight in July?
Yes.
So they'll have to train while coaching?
On episode 13, the guys will fight that are living in the house for the finale. A week later, the coaches will fight on pay-per-view.
All right. Have you talked to Chris Leben yet?
Yes, I talked to Chris Leben.
How is he doing, and what's his future?
From what he tells me, he's doing fine. He gave me his explanation on why he took that, and he needed to be suspended. Chris Leben is one of those guys who, from season 1 of The Ultimate Fighter, a guy who's had a lot of personal problems, didn't have the greatest upbringing, and talk about a guy who's overcome a lot of adversity in his life. He's one of those guys. I care about this kid. I like him, and I respect him as a fighter, and I just want to make sure that it's one thing to say, okay, you made these mistakes, and here's what's going to happen. You're on suspension for a year and whatever. And it's real easy to go out and just cut a guy and say, oh, you did this and you're bad. I care about this guy as a person and as a human being. So it's more than just his fight career. I want to know that Chris Leben's personal life is okay and he's not out there doing anything that's going to hurt him in his life. Fighting is one thing. It's one side of this business and what we all do. But most of the guys here that fight for us, we truly care about and want to make sure that, they're okay in their personal life too.
Okay, final thing. Considering all that Cesar Gracie and Nick Diaz have said about GSP, supposedly ducking Nick Diaz, did you talk to Nick about GSP's injury, and if so, what was his reaction about now having to fight Condit?
I didn't. Joe Silva made that call. But let me make one thing clear, okay, for everybody. Every fighter who fights in the UFC knows this, and they all talk this smack that is absolutely not true. It is impossible to fake an injury in the UFC. You don't fake an injury because you don't want to fight somebody. If you call and you say, like George St. Pierre, I blew my ACL. George St. Pierre is flown in and he meets with our doctors and they check him out and they confirm that he's injured. Okay? Nobody fakes an injury in the UFC. It's not even possible. So that's all.
the Nick Diaz, sort of. Was he happy to take the Condit fight, or was he bummed out about it?
No, listen, Nick Diaz is a fighter. Was he bummed out? I'm sure he was bummed out because he wanted the George fight, just like George is extremely bummed out because he wants that Diaz fight. But, these guys are fighters, and they do it. Carlos Condit is I saw somewhere that Diaz had said that Condit is a tougher fight than George St. Pierre. And the reality is that Condit is a tough fight for anybody out there. The kid is one of the best in the world and is starting to gain his respect in this business.
All right, we could talk for hours, but we'll leave it at that. UFC 140 goes down this Saturday night live from the Air Canada Centre here in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. You've got Jon Jones fighting Lyoto Machida for the UFC light heavyweight title. Thank you for the time, Dana, and
Thanks, buddy.
good to see you.